And there's Gina Worful of so many things we are just talking about. But I guess mastering mindfulness is probably our first, path and adventure that we got to know you. Um, and you
Yeah.
can tell us more about what you've had going on. But welcome back. It's been like over a year, if you believe it or not.
I know, thank you. Yeah, I think the first time we talked, we dove really into, like, the mindfulness route and kinda why people tend to overeat and self-sabotage and struggle, and so I think that's where we left off last time.
Yeah, absolutely. But you were also wearing a continuous glucose monitor.
Oh, that's right, I was.
And you were like, I don't know if you were like part of an experiment or if you were doing it for yourself. I don't remember that
Mm,
small
yeah.
detail. So how'd that turn out?
It was very eye-opening. I would love to do it again. It was so eye-opening, and just for anyone who doesn't know, a continuous glucose monitor, it just goes into your skin and it measures, you can measure your blood sugar anytime around the clock. You just connect an app to your phone. And so right now it's not available. I don't think it's available just yet for everyday consumers. It's right now it's for diabetics. So yeah, I was a part of like a beta test group for getting it out to the public. So I think that they will be made available, I think pretty soon. I think it's not quite there yet as of right now when we're recording this. But I don't know why it's not. It should be accessible to everyone because you can real time measure your blood sugar. And so basically, whenever you eat carbs, that's going to raise your blood sugar. And most people don't realize how easy it is to spike their blood sugar. And that's something that I found so eye opening is that a lot of the time we're eating like breads and crackers and we're just thinking like, oh, I just shouldn't eat too much of it. But even things like just a little bit of fruit or a little bit of potatoes would spike my blood sugar so high. And that was just so eye opening because blood sugar spiking, I mean, that's what keeps us from, losing stubborn belly fat over time, spike too high. That's how we get, inflammation in our bodies and how we get, drops in blood sugars, how we get cravings, um, how it affects our cardiovascular health. I mean, it really affects our entire body and it makes weight loss really difficult if we're getting these big huge jumps of sugar in our bloodstream. And it was very eye opening to see how easy it was to spike my blood sugar.
So two questions then. First question is, did you see a significant consistent difference if let's and I don't even know what you would eat for breakfast, but if you had say some eggs, spinach and egg omelet, and then the next day you had oatmeal, right? So that as an example, right? So we just went carb free and carb.
Yeah.
And then the second part is not having diabetes. How long would it take for your blood sugar then to come back to a normal or less eye-opening number?
Yeah. Definitely could see a difference in my choices and even a difference between just having eggs with spinach or having eggs with spinach and a little bit of sweet potato. Adding in that little bit of sweet potato just skyrocketed my blood sugar. And so it was so eye opening of how much we need to be probably, at least I need to be a lot more mindful of how many carbs I'm eating. And even just a small amount of carbs really can spike blood sugar. So I was like, man, I can't imagine on a day if I really indulged in a bunch of desserts, like what would have really happened. I didn't really see that. Um, but what I thought was interesting is everything that you do does make a difference. So if you eat some carbs and then you sit on the couch, yeah, your blood sugar is just going to keep climbing and climbing and it's going to stay high for a while. If you get up and you go for a walk, or you do some a little bit of movement or you challenge your muscles after you eat, it really can help to bring down your blood sugar. So I could really see from a numbers data perspective that it could really help drop blood sugar a lot just by going for a walk or by doing something to kind of challenge the muscles and help them really use up that sugar in your bloodstream.
Now, what about the opposite way? You say did a fasted workout of some sort, even if it was just a brisk walk, and then ate. But let's say you went with the lower carb option. Did you see a big spike there because you kind of were maybe burning some residual sugars and fats and things like that in the system?
It was kind of interesting. It made me realize the complexity of blood sugar and how hard it must be for people who do have diabetes, because sometimes it is like chasing things that don't make sense. And I did notice that the lower carb I ate, the more tightly controlled my blood sugar was. But I don't know if I had it long enough to really, really get a good idea of, like, sometimes even fasted cardio, my blood sugar would raise because my body is breaking down glycogen and putting it into my bloodstream. Or even stress. Stress plays a huge role in blood sugar. Some people are doing a really low carb or ketogenic diet, and they have no idea that they're actually spiking their blood sugar really high because their stress is so high. And stress just dumps sugar into your bloodstream. So that was kind of eye opening too, that when stress goes up, blood sugar does too.
And there's a direct correlation to cortisol too, right?
Yeah. I mean, cortisol is your stress hormone. So when that stress hormone goes up, your body's going to start dumping sugar into your bloodstream. So you have energy, in that fight or flight state. So it is eye opening that stress, it doesn't matter if you're on a, low carb diet. If you are really high stressed, it's going to take a long time before you deplete that glycogen enough to really, your body is just going to be dumping sugar into your bloodstream.
Yeah. Well, so personally, I think that's the answer to the question, why isn't it readily available? Because I think that
Yeah.
the average person is going to see a number and freak out and try to do something. So whether that number is low, and then they're going to
hmm
be worried that, but again, we're assuming that they're not diabetic, right? So they get this low number and they think they need to spike themselves or something like that. And then vice versa, they eat really clean, healthy meals, but maybe it is has an apple as a part of their salad or something like that, and then they see this spike like 10 minutes later and they're freaking out, and maybe they're like trying to do so. I think that that's probably the big holdup personally, because
Yeah.
there's just so much that goes into it, like you said, and you're obviously educated and following these things like constantly, let alone those of us that are mildly educated, and then the rest of us that are like not educated at all on it, and we're going to carry this thing around.
Yeah. It's really sad that people don't have access to a continuous glucose monitor. I think everybody should. It's so eye opening. I think everybody should, because we could prevent diabetes long before it happens. Unfortunately, you can't get a continuous glucose monitor until you are diabetic. And so people who are trying to really keep that away, like, they should absolutely have access, but unfortunately, it's just not the way that our system works. So it's like, doing your best with, knowing what and trying to really be smart about keeping your blood sugar in check.
Yeah, our system is very backwards as far as I'm concerned. I'm thankful for our medicine. I'm thankful for our doctors and everybody that surrounds those systems. But at the same time, we are not really into preventative medicine at all. We do a
Mhm.
physical. Generally, most insurances allow physical once a year. But even myself, who has a thyroid issue and
Mm.
some other things, like they don't test everything every year. I don't remember the
Right.
last time my blood tests had like hormone levels, like testosterone levels and
Mm.
stuff on it. It did on my initial one like 7 or 8 years ago, but I don't recall seeing it since. So because they're not
Yeah.
worried that I have low T or something like that.
Yep.
Um, it's just crazy because the way I look at it, maybe I'm crazy, but the way I look at it is, and I don't know how these things are measured, but let's continue down glucose or your sugars and stuff like that, and whatever the number represents, a 105, if I recall, is like your threshold. Once you're above that, then you really are entering that diabetes stage. If like you can't,
You really ideally wanna be below 99.
okay,
Between 99 and 125, you're kind of starting to enter pre-diabetic a little bit too high. You wanna get it back down. Once you hit, 125, that's where you're around, diabetes.
okay, so if I go to the doctor and I have my blood drawn and I'm at a 110 on that day and I did it fasted and everything like that, odds are my doctor is going to ask me to do another one because they're concerned that maybe I am, entering type 2 diabetes, right? But on the flip side of that, if you are measuring, say, testosterone, since I brought that up, and again, I don't really remember how this is rated, but let's say it's on a 0 to 10 scale, and I'm at 2, then they're like, "Well, you're okay."
Mhm.
Well, wait,
Yep.
this is what I don't understand. Why shouldn't I be at a 9 or a 10? Because what you're telling me is when I'm almost in there for the diabetes thing, that it's really hazardous to my health. But when I'm at the very low end of this other scale, whether it be testosterone, something else, I just feel like, if possible, why aren't we maximizing all of our
Yep.
potential? You know, it,
Yeah. And
strange.
that's the problem is that they're not looking at it from are things optimal? They're just saying they're typically looking at numbers and saying, are you in a disease range? So that's where I care so much about looking at numbers and saying, hey, is everything optimal? Can we make sure that everything's optimal before it goes so far out of range that we're like, well, your doctor's like, now you got a disease. Now it's going to be managed with medication. But yeah, I mean, I love the way that you think on is this optimal? How could it be better?
hmm Well, and I mean, I had to basically beg for a colonoscopy. I went to my
Wow.
doctor for my annual checkup. I'm 40, and she says, like, anything else on your mind? And I said, yes, I'd like to do this. And, she's asking me why. And, besides any actual concerns, the fact to me is, I know that like diverticulitis is not a general like genetic disposition, so to speak. But my mom had that. She had other issues with her bowels and her intestines and all these things like that, and eventually
Yeah.
died at 66 years old. Right. So I'm like,
Mm,
I've got a couple little things going on. So why don't we get tested? Well, generally we don't test people this early. And I'm like,
yeah.
generally, like I don't care what we
Yeah.
generally do. Like I have insurance, we pay for it, and let's get this thing done. It's certainly not
Yeah.
a pleasurable experience. It's not like I'm asking for,
Right.
blood
Right.
pressure, like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I just think that, and I have a doctor who I think is pretty forward thinking. She is, in touch with like today's practices, and yet it was still not a struggle, but I had to really explain for 5 minutes why I felt I needed one, and then she was able to approve that. To
Yeah.
me, it should be more.
Unfortunately, it's not uncommon. I think that that's most of the people that I work with have been begging their doctors for labs and they get something really basic, very, very basic lab panel. And their doctors are just kind of looking for, do you have a disease? And if not, they kind of send you on your way. Where a lot of people are feeling not optimal, they're not feeling their best. So if your labs are not optimal, you're probably going to not feel optimal. You're going to feel
Mhm.
suboptimal, but it's not diagnostic of a disease. So most of the time they tell you you're fine, it's in range and send you on your way. But really, I think asking yourself, are you settling for suboptimal and how you feel in life, your energy or just your overall health and vitality? Like, does it feel suboptimal and not settling for those answers?
So let's say I'm fortunate enough to, live in the beautiful area that you live in, and I'm a part of some of your programming and around you. What would you be advising as far as labs, getting them drawn? What are we looking for? Like, how are we making ourselves better?
Yeah, well, it kind of depends. So, if you have a good doctor, you can always start there. You can always start with your doctor and ask, can we get, unfortunately, some doctors are really tough and they don't get as big of a panel as I would like. But, you can always try and ask for, can I look at my blood sugar? Can I look at my cardiovascular numbers? These are things that you should really be checking, not just your total cholesterol, but going really in depth looking at your different the not just the total but the HDL and the LDL, and if you can get even more numbers on the LDL, like what types of LDL, what's the size, what's the particle number, as much as you can get out of your doctor, squeeze every bit that you can out of them. Check your fasting blood sugar, check your hemoglobin A1C, get get familiar with what those numbers mean and what they are. Like, this is your health, and start tracking it early on so you can start to watch for trends. Where is it going? Track all of that kind of stuff. The way that I work with people completely remotely. I don't see people in person. So it doesn't actually matter where you live, but it kind of depends on the person. So for some people, we can check things like their blood sugar and their hormones, their thyroid, things like that. I can't diagnose a disease. I'm not a doctor. I won't diagnose anything. But what I do look for is trends in numbers. And so if you start to see something that looks like it's trending, or getting close to out of range, that's something that you're going to want to pull back into a more optimal range. And I know that's hard for an everyday consumer to be able to do and know how to do that. So, work with somebody that you trust that can tell you, hey, even though this is that it looks like it's in a good zone, can it could be better. And then they can talk with you about how that number could improve or get better. So I think it's great to actually get a baseline of numbers when you're young as possible. Do it in your 30s, do it in your 40s, your 50s, so that along the way, you can start to see where things are trending. And so if you're like, this one is headed in the wrong direction, I can start to pull those things back in. So I do a variety of labs for some people who, really struggle to lose weight and they don't know why. I really like measuring stress hormones. It's very easy to do. You can just measure your stress hormones in saliva, and your stress hormones are responsible for that stubborn belly fat because that's protection. So if your stress hormones are high, your body's not going to lose belly fat because it's holding on to it for protection. So for some people who just have really hormone issues that they can't figure out, or stubborn weight loss, I really like to look at their stress hormone cortisol. And it's very eye opening for a lot of people to actually uh you know see that they don't manage their stress well, and there's no way their body will lose weight if they're not managing those stress hormones.
Can you break down a little bit more as to why that is? Like, it because I think we don't sometimes give enough credit, if you will, to like the fact that we living in houses and driving cars and these types of things are really a lot newer than they seem. I mean, I know that the car was invented over 100 years ago and was starting on a assembly line in the early 1900s, but you think about humanity as a whole, and we're still like coming from that kind of concept, right? And so I'm
Hmm.
guessing that the reason that something like belly fat is hard to burn, because like you said, it's there for like our protection. Our protection in the past, stressors would have been probably predators or something like that, and we would need energy and muscle and such to fight off. Am I going down the right path here, or am I totally crazy?
Yeah. No, you're spot on. And if you think about it, when you wake up in the morning and you have texts and emails, and then you have kids and you have dogs and you have to get to work, and then you have more emails and more things to do, and you're running errands, and then you're fighting traffic, and then there's stoplights, and there's all these things that are so stimulating all the time in our environment. Your brain is constantly receiving that as information. And so your brain is constantly releasing stress hormones just to keep you on, to make it through the day, just to make sure that you have enough energy, that you have focus, that you're making it through. It might not feel like survival to you. It might, but it might not. And you're actually releasing these hormones all day that's telling your body, in survival. So it looks different. Survival looks different than what it used to a long time ago. But yeah, now it's keeping us storing belly fat because we actually live in survival mode. We live in fight or flight. So a lot of people, when they start actually looking at their stress hormones, and they lower their stress hormones, when those come down, then the sex hormones, because if you think about it, if your body is not safe to reproduce, if you're in a threat to your survival, your body's going to shut down reproduction, which means it's going to drop all the testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all these hormones that we need for reproduction, which gives us a good metabolism, good muscle mass, we can reproduce, all of that. So that's when our bodies feel safe. When we're in fight or flight mode, other hormones really shut down and the stress hormones come on board and stores belly fat for protection, raises blood sugar so you have energy in your body. It really breaks things down. It breaks down your muscle mass, your metabolism, because it wouldn't be a good survival mechanism to lose weight, if you're in a survival state, right? So your body's going to want to hold on to fat for protection and really slow down your metabolism.
So like all the people that are ripped walking up the beach, just understand like you don't have any fat, so you guys are gonna die soon. So I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but in all seriousness, okay, so we do these tests and we're not happy with our results. What do we do? I mean, I realize that's a very open question. It's very specialized
Yeah.
and individualized, but as a whole, like, what are we going to start looking at anyways? Are we looking at diet? Are we looking at exercise? Are we looking
Mhm.
at like what's the like I guess like the top few things that we're starting with?
Yeah, I mean, I think taking a really honest inventory of your life. And I think a lot of people are immediately go to I just don't have enough time. But when you see your data and you see things that are in the red zone, it's like, when are you going to make time? Because what else is more important? What else is more important? If you don't have your health, what else do you have? And so I really do think sometimes getting the data can be a really good wake up call to really look and say, where do I need to change in my life? Where have I let life take over what's important to me? Because what is more important to me than my health so that I can be there for my family and I can have a good quality of life when I'm, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80? What else is more important? And kind of doing an inventory of life of like, where in my life could I maybe make some changes and really seeing for yourself? Labs are nice because they can give you more direction. Instead of just saying, "Oh my gosh, I know I need to do everything. I know my life could be healthier in so many ways." What you can do is you can find that one domino that affects everything else. So if you don't know where your health is and you go and get a blood panel from your doctor, you can see, okay, you know what? My blood sugar is actually trending out of range. That's where I need to focus my effort. I need to clean up my diet and kind of cut back on the carbs that I'm eating and get some more good fruits and veggies, more proteins, more healthy fats, cut back on some of, the crackers and the breads and the pastas. That can give you more direction. Or if you measure your stress hormones and your stress hormones are high, or you feel it in your body and you know that you've just been way too busy and not spending time really slowing down and learning how to lower those stress hormones. For some people, it is actually just slowing down a little bit in life. And for some people, it's actually just learning how to breathe to get their body out of that fight or flight state so they're not in that fight or flight state all day. You just take a few slow breaths and feel your stress hormones come down. Feel your body switch from fight or flight into this really calm, rested state so that you might still be busy. You might have a lot to do, but you're in this very calm, centered state when you do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. Now, let's say that you are just really resistant to these things, or maybe you actually really are busy. So I think a lot of us do say we're busy, but I think if any of us carried around a notebook and wrote down every time that we like did something different, which obviously would take its own time, but if we wrote down that while I was making breakfast, I opened my phone and checked Facebook while I waited for the toast to pop back up, or I was on TikTok while I was waiting for my chicken to bake or something like that, right? If we wrote all that down, I think we would see that we are wasting a lot of time. And
Yeah.
but there are legitimate people that are going from 4 or 5 a.m. till 10 or 11 p.m. and then back to bed, and it's like nonstop. And if they wrote it down, we'd be like, wow, they are very productive. Um, are there um, what's the right word? What other things could that person do to kind of assist if they have some issues, so to speak?
Well, I think that one of the most important things to do is to give yourself 5 minutes in the morning to connect with your body. Give yourself 5 minutes before the world triggers and activates that fight or flight system. So if you wake up and you grab your phone and you dive into the day, you're immediately activating your fight or flight system. And that's going to create this, putting your body into that state. You're going to be on this autopilot survival response all day. It's going to drive your decision making, how you're eating, how much you eat, the sugar that you eat, the snacks that you eat. You're not going to have any willpower because you're in fight or flight, which is dulling your willpower. You're in survival mode. So it's really important to actually spend 5 minutes in the morning connecting with your body and actually practicing to breathe and lower those stress hormones, and just get curious with your body and ask it what it needs so that you can better throughout the day. You can learn how to calm your nervous system so your fight or flight system isn't driving your decision making and your eating. And you can be more tapped in and connected to your body so that when you're hungry or when you're just stressed, you're actually a lot more connected and you can hear the difference between those signals. Most people are so used to their stress hormones driving their decision making all day, they don't know the difference. They don't know if it's hunger, if it's stress. They have no idea what's driving their eating. So by spending 5 minutes in the morning, you actually create that connection with your body to slow down, practice breathing really slow, practice lowering what it feels like to lower those stress hormones and that response in your body. And then asking your body, like waking up that connection. What does hunger feel like? What emotions are present today? What stress is present today? And you can actually start lowering those stress hormones and getting a lot more connected with your body so you can really navigate those signals throughout the day. So even if you're really busy and you're going, the connection with your body is always number one, no matter what. You know what's happening. You know when you're stressed, you know when you're anxious, you know when you're just bored, you know when you're, coming home and you haven't had anything pleasurable in your day and so you're looking for a snack because you're looking for pleasure. Like you're so tapped into your body, you know exactly what your body is signaling to you that you need, even when you're really busy. So I think the most important thing you could do is make the relationship with your body your number one priority. And that just comes from spending time with it.
You were talking about the breathing, and so I was not looking at my phone. I was pulling up my Audible list. Have you read and or listened to? I think it's called Breath by James Nestor.
Yeah, amazing, huh?
Yeah, it was really intense, really, to like hear everything he had to say about it. And I guess I always look at, even if you don't subscribe to it all, there's some, there's minimally some truth to it, if it's not all true, right? And I mean, that's where
Mhm.
for like I guess us all to figure out more research, all that type of stuff. But I think the cool thing about it was then there were other breathing exercises at the end of the book. Um, I wouldn't recommend skipping to the last, like I'd recommend understanding it. Otherwise, it's like grabbing a calculator and never learning how to do 2 plus 2. You just
Yeah.
punch it in, right? But that was a really good book and something that I was recently like, you know what? When I finish what I'm doing, I got to get back and do that one again because I need a reminder, and
Yeah.
kind of need to, re get my stuff together, like, uh, there's certain habits that I got out of and I want to get back into. And I think that that little exercise there, is simple enough to do 5 to 10 minutes in the morning that it is not really
Mhm.
stealing time from anything else.
Yeah, most people feel that it's really irrelevant because they don't feel good right then and there. Like they immediately want to feel good. And it's not about getting good at feeling. This is from one of my favorite books, Presence Process. It's not about feeling good, it's about getting good at feeling. And so you really can't be in control over your health and be disconnected from your body. Your body is the longest relationship you'll ever have. Like invest time into it, into just being with it. And if you don't have time, I think that's a deeper question to ask yourself is where do you think that your self-worth is around how worthy it is to actually dedicate some time to you and your body and your health, and what does that mean? What does that mean for the quality of life that you're going to have if you neglect your health and your body?
Well, and a hard thing to remember, it's not being selfish to think about taking care of yourself, right? Like you think about if
Mhm.
you've ever flown, they say to put the mask on yourself than help others, including your own kids.
Yeah.
Well, why? Because if my kid can't figure it out and I've wasted all my energy and all my oxygen trying to help them and it doesn't work out, and I have not put that oxygen mask on myself, then I die and I still don't help my kid. Right. And so
Yep.
it's kind of the same thing. Right. It's like, yeah, maybe if you have a lot of things and a family and this and that, you can't dedicate 3 hours to your day, but you have to find a way to dedicate some time to yourself to take care of yourself so that if you really are living for others, that you can continue doing so. Otherwise, you're
Yep.
cutting that short, whatever it is. And at the end of the
Mhm.
day, we can all be healthy, but at some point, age eventually does catch up to you. So, do you want to, get to that point like on an easier path or a harder path? And that's a decision that you have to really make. And I think
Yeah.
when we decide to eat, Whoppers and Big Macs and Taco Bell and stuff like every single day for lunch and dinner and not do anything, I think we're making those decisions, subconsciously. And I know it's not easy to change, but I don't know how to stress like your own health and importance of being somewhat healthier, as healthy as possible, anyways.
Well, I think that that's a really great place to start. If you're not feeling motivated, dig into why you really want something and keep going deeper. Why would you want to be healthy? And, some people are like, well, I want to lose weight. It'd be great to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds or 30 pounds. It's like, okay, why do you want to lose 30 pounds? And keep going deeper into how is it going to affect your energy? And if you have more energy, how does that affect what you do day to day and how you interact with people? Think about when you're not taking care of yourself and you don't feel good in your body and you're exhausted. How is your energy with your spouse or your kids or your coworkers or your friends? Are you excited about going out? Are you interacting with them really excited and full of love? Or is there this frustration that's coming out or this, it's very challenging when we're not taking care of ourselves. It can be really hard. Um, so going deep into why do you want energy? Why do you want to feel good? Maybe why do you want to feel confident in your body? Or like how does that trickle into your life? And see if you can tap into something that is really drives you and inspires you. And if not, maybe it's just not something that you care about, and that's okay too. Not everyone has to care about being healthy or, taking care of themselves. It's not I don't force anything on anybody. This is for you to really dig deep into what do you want and why do you want it. And I know it's hard, it's not easy. But let that be your fuel and your driver when you're deciding what am I going to eat. Have that deep why that's backing it that will help you drive your decision making. And that's where your motivation and your power is.
What's your thoughts on the cheat day? I'm going to eat really good for 6 days a week, and I'm going to have my cheat day on the seventh day and get right back to it. And let's say I can do it. Let's say I'm the Rock, so supposedly that's what
Yeah.
it is. So I've got the willpower and the motivation to do it. Good idea, bad idea, or your own personal thing.
Personally, yeah, I personally don't love the idea of cheat days because it kind of adds fuel to like eating disorder style eating of like I'm going to try to people really obsess over eating perfect on the not cheat days and then go on this all out binge. And it just number one, it puts a lot of stress on your body. And most people don't really end up getting very far. I mean, when you have this cheat day and you end up binging on whatever you want, I mean, sometimes the calories that you can eat can really backtrack you from all the work that you just did. And so I think it tends to put people on this roller coaster of being hyper vigilant and really focused on trying to be perfect and then binge eating on their cheat days, where I think people have a lot more long term success when they give themselves permission to eat what they want. I'm all about personal empowerment. I want you to always be in control over your food, what you eat, how much you eat, and feel like you are the adult. You're in charge, not that you have rules and you're not allowed to. I think people eventually they want to be that rebellious teenager and break the rules. I don't like giving people rules. I like for them to tap into their body and learn how to honor what their body is saying, learn where cravings come from. And if they do want to eat the dessert, how do they eat it so that they're in control? But when they eat it, they don't have to binge eat it because they're like, I can have it anytime I want. And
Yeah.
then they don't really binge it anymore. And it kind of gets them off of that undereat, overeat roller coaster. But at the end of the day, it's all about figuring out what works for you. Everybody's different, and that's okay. I think the goal is to move as close to real food as possible and eat in a way that feels good to your body. If that works for you, great. Like, do it. I support you. But what I find is that most people will end up on a undereat binge roller coaster, and it just creates this hyper focus obsession with food. Not for everybody. That's a big generalization, but that's just what I tend to notice when I work with people, that I prefer to just learn how to kind of listen to what your body needs, because you can eat desserts. And if you practice eating what you want and you practice until you're just content, most people, their weight actually normalizes and balances out without ever having rules or restrictions or things like that. But it's a practice. It's definitely a practice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know for sure when I have done things like low carb version of diets and stuff like that, it's very easy for me to either turn down, those things, or at the very minimum, if we're, let's say, at a restaurant and we decide that the kids can get a dessert and it's something that like either I haven't had in forever, or maybe I've even like never actually had this version of it because there's probably not a lot of desserts
Yeah.
that we haven't had, that I can actually take literally the smallest piece you've ever seen, eat it, be satisfied, and not want more. And yet, when I'm not following those diets, then I'm like, you know what? I'll take one of those too. Like it's really crazy
Right.
how that works. And it is definitely
There's definitely the accountability there. When you're on something, there's definitely the accountability of, do you really want this?
Mhm.
Really stopping and checking in.
Yeah, which I think kind of maybe also goes back to if we had things like continuous glucose monitors and stuff like that that were readily available, we would almost be able to better
It's very
answer.
eye opening.
Because we'd say, well, geez, I just had what I thought was a healthy dinner and, I'm like out of control. I definitely better not have
Yep.
cheesecake with caramel sauce on top of that.
Yep.
So,
I can tell you, if we were all wearing continuous glucose monitor, I'm sure my choices were very different, very, very different. And I was like, holy cow, it's how easy it is to go for the dessert and not think anything of it when you're not seeing what's happening.
yeah. So I've obviously seen, via social media that you've been doing some different like speeches and conferences, focusing on everything from hormones to, I think recently something with like what you eat and your hearing. Is that right?
Yeah,
So
that is right.
So like what else is going on in the world of Gina besides
Mhm.
these fun things that we've been discussing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the projects that I work on, everybody's different. And so it's really all about, my goal is for you to know your body from the inside out. So whether you're using labs or you're connecting to your body and you're breathing, whatever it is, it's really about getting to know your body from the inside out. And so for people who struggle with that relationship to their food, that's where I teach mastering mindfulness. And the goal there is to really spend time with your body, get to know your stress hormones and how that might drive your eating, practice breathing with your body, really build that relationship to it. And then I do another health program that teaches people more of the science of healthy eating and how to kind of create their health from the inside out down to like a cellular level, how to eat healthy and things like that. So that's another program that I'm doing. Um, so yeah, it's kind of the two sides. I have the science side, and then the more of the mindfulness based approach, and lots of labs to help people get their data and really see what's going on inside their bodies. So if there's anything I could say, is just be on that journey of getting to know your body. You don't have to conquer everything. You don't have to know everything. But just doing a little bit of inventory, having more awareness of, what do I really need to change in my life? What small changes could I make every day that could really make a difference? And what does my body need versus what does the rest of the world need? But like noticing, if you are eating low carb, how does it make your body feel? Tap in and notice what works for your body and what doesn't work for your body.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. One thing that I really wish would happen to me is feeling gross after eating poorly because like everyone always
If you
says that.
tap into your body, you will.
I
If
guess
you
I
really
don't
tap
know
into your body, you'll notice.
because I'm like, yeah, I just ate like trash and I mean I feel fine. So yeah,
So you're probably you might be used to it.
that might be true. That's possible. So but I was going to actually, I guess like ask. So when you focus on somebody's understanding of their body and then, like the dietary needs, I mean, we are somewhat individualized, right? Some people respond better to again like a low carb high fat diet than others. Some people respond better
Mhm.
to like a vegan or vegetarian diet than others. So like, is that part of what you would do with somebody, or is it kind of like, hey, here's my plan and we're going to follow it?
Yeah, I don't give people plans anymore. I do give some people resources that they can learn from on different, styles of eating, different health strategies. But where I really like to train people is how to learn how to listen to their body, how to know what their body's communicating so that they can tell me what style of eating does best for their body. So I don't do the rules anymore because most people just break them. I don't give them specific meal plans because most people just don't follow them.
Yeah.
So I teach people how to really listen to their body, and they take so much more initiative to really learn about their body and what is it communicating, and they can kind of navigate. So start paying attention to your body. Notice, how does your energy change when you eat certain foods? How does your metabolism change? How does your gut feel? How does your digestion change? And really, how do your lab markers change? And really think about becoming your own research project.
Yeah, I think that's to me the key is like being your own research project, like really diving into yourself and playing around with a
Hmm.
few things, nothing dangerous. If for some reason you were doing anything that is considered like a prescription or whatever, making sure that you're with a doctor, like I'm not suggesting like
Right.
doing crazy stuff, but definitely, working with yourself and professionals that understand what we're looking at and figuring it out because it doesn't have to be like grueling, right? Like we don't have to wake up and go like, oh, I gotta have Greek yogurt again. Like that's not the case.
Yeah.
You can figure stuff
Right.
out. So I think that's the reason I've tried to follow you for so long. It's because
Oh.
I think that you've always been this way. You've always been like
Hmm.
there. Not everything works for everybody, so let's figure out what works for you, and then let's make it really work. Optimize.
Yeah.
Back to that
Hmm.
optimization thing.
Right. Definitely. Yep.
Would you say though, with that being said, are you still a fan of intermittent fasting?
It completely depends on the person. It works for some people and it doesn't for other people. For some people love it, but some people have their stress hormones are so high, and then you add on fasting, and then it revs up their stress hormones even higher, and then they can't lose weight, or they end up, overeating later in the day. They can't stop snacking. They can't stop eating. So for some people, it's great, and for some people, it's actually works against them. So everything should be dialed in to everybody. I mean, being honest with yourself. Do you intermittent fast and then you feel like you can't stop eating later in the day?
Hmm.
Or do you intermittent fast and you still just can't seem to lose belly fat? Those are some signs that intermittent fasting probably isn't for you.
Have you ever heard of a 5-2 fasting? I'm sure you've heard of it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
that was new to me, but some, and I could look him up probably here if you want. But he was talking about that they did like some sort of test where they did like your normal like 16 hours off, 6 to 8 hours on of eating, and then they also compared them with people that did the 2 days of like a severe caloric deficit, maybe around a 600 calorie intake once on those 2 days, and the other 5 days kind of eating normally. And they had apparently very similar results as far as weight loss, belly fat, and actually, it sounded like the people in that 5-2 actually had a little bit better belly
Mm.
fat loss than the intermittent fasters, like the normal intermittent fasters. So I thought that was really
Mhm.
interesting and something I wanted to, learn more about, so to speak.
Yeah, there's so many different styles, and some people do better than others. And, it's kind of figuring out what works for you and also being open minded that if it's not working for you, like that's okay too. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing and expect it to work for you.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of science that for some people it doesn't work. If your stress hormones are too high and you're revving up your stress hormones more, there's plenty of people that I see that they're like, wow, intermittent fasting actually works against me. That's okay too.
So, what are your thoughts on like our natural body? I don't know if the right word is transgression, but as we grow older, certain things change, right? So, like women go through menopause and it changes their hormone
Hmm.
levels, and men, are naturally losing testosterone levels, and there's other hormones in our bodies too. But these are like the ones that we all know, I guess. And like, I guess I'm not trying to ask you if you're a proponent for like TRT or something along those lines, but I mean, does that add up to you? Like, well, just because you're 60, you should automatically have less than when you were 30. Like, is
Hmm.
there a benefit to having less various hormones and having other
Mm.
health factors being more prevalent that maybe could be changed through, some sort of prescription of some sort?
Yeah, well, our hormones and levels of things are definitely over time they will decline. Our bodies just won't produce as much. And it makes sense that if you're not in years of reproduction anymore, you don't need those hormones. You don't need hormones to make a baby anymore. It's just what our bodies and it's just creating it for our body's needs. Unfortunately, we have so much stress and toxins in our environment that it very, very much accelerates our body's ability to make these hormones or have them work in our body like they're supposed to. So sometimes there is the place for replacement. And I think, it's such a personal decision. I don't think it should be just a one size fits all, everyone gets this at this age. But I think it can be helpful to work with a practitioner that you trust who can really help measure your body's levels and dial it in for your body. But yeah, unfortunately, there's so much stress and toxins in our environment that basically mimic hormones and then block our hormones from working. So it's just our environment has changed our body so much too. So I think that there is one aspect that naturally, yes, some of our hormones might decline, and we don't need the same hormone levels maybe as we once did. But but we could be doing a lot to protect our hormones. Stress is huge. Stress will convert your testosterone into estrogen. So will alcohol. Um, so will sugar. So does BPA. BPA is endocrine disruptor. So it'll basically, that's in plastic water bottles. Basically, it binds onto your cell receptors and it blocks your hormones from working properly. So, this is really important for anyone who has healthy hormone levels, but they feel like their hormones are off. You might have healthy levels of hormones in your bloodstream, but these chemicals that are in plastic can bind onto your receptors and block your hormones from working. So your lab results could look normal, but you feel very off, like you feel like you have hormone deficiency. So as best as you can, clean up your environment, try and, go with non-toxic cleaning products. What really great resource is the ewg.org. It's the environmentalworkinggroup.org, ewg.org, and you can search different cleaning products and things and see how safe and non-toxic or toxic they are rated. And when you see the word endocrine disruptor, that means it disrupts your endocrine system, your hormone system. So if you have a product, a skincare product, or a plastic water bottle or something, and it's an endocrine disruptor, that means it's affecting your hormones.
Now, I subscribe to everything you just said, but for the purpose of conversation, would it label something endocrine disruptor simply because maybe there is a product or substance in, say, a food or a cleaning supply or something along those lines that truly isn't an issue? I guess here's a different way I'm going to ask this question. Botox can be used for migraine headache, and it's a really good way to fix migraine headaches. and
Mhm.
to potentially for some people get off of all like medications and over the counter medications as well, right? But Botox wasn't created for migraine headaches. Viagra wasn't created for erectile dysfunction, right? But we find some other uses. Sometimes there are things that we have in our system that are for a specific purpose, but we can change it up a little bit and use it for a different purpose. And I feel like one thing that I see a lot is that people feel like they can't take um, a certain thing because it has something in it that is known to kill mice or something like that. But
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't kill humans. Like I'm just using. I mean, I'm very getting very like. But so I
Yeah.
guess my question about that is related to that concept. Like will there be things in there that truly aren't disruptive, but maybe they're labeled that way?
I don't know. They do research on these products and they're shown to disrupt our hormones. So I wouldn't take any chances.
Yeah,
I don't, who knows, but they're shown to alter hormones or they mimic hormones and they alter hormone balance. So I wouldn't take any chances. A lot of people have a lot of issues with them.
yeah. So that's
So as best that you can, I would say definitely clean up your environment. It's worth it as best that you can. Go non-toxic.
ewg.org, right?
It's a great resource. Yeah, it's a really great resource.
So I've heard the conversation. I've checked out ewg.org. How do I get a hold of you if I'm interested in, going a little bit further and learning a lot more?
Yeah, I share a lot of stuff on social media. My Instagram is Gina.Worful, and I have a lot of free resources and trainings and videos on my website too. I have a weekly newsletter that I send out tips and nutrition strategies on GinaWorful.com, and videos on why do we have late night snacking and different resources, and you'll find a ton of free stuff on there.
Yeah, and that newsletter comes out on like Sunday nights. I feel like that's when I get
It
mine,
does.
and I
Yep,
love it.
it
So
does.
it's an excellent newsletter, and this is the beauty of it. Like you said, not everything pertains to you at all the time, right? So in the
Yeah,
first couple of sentences or paragraphs, if it's not the one for me this week, then you just hit delete, and then next week you
yeah.
read the whole thing. I mean, like it's so simple. So sign up and subscribe and all those things. Um, I know that you have some more things to go to, so I certainly appreciate you taking time out of your day. Plus, we're in different time zones,
For
so like you're just
sure.
kind of like
Yep.
middle of day, and I'm almost ending mine. Uh,
Yep, that's right.
Gina, again, always great. So much info, and definitely follow on social because there's a lot of good information coming from your site, from your pages. So I appreciate
Thank
it immensely
you.
and appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, we'll see you. Have a good one.